Hey everyone, today we're taking a look at the Carmatech Supremacy scope, which is a paintball specific scope. It's actually designed from the ground up to be used with paintballs, which I think is really cool. Specifically first strikes. This isn't really gonna help you with real paintballs. I don't think scopes generally help you too much with regular paintballs anyway. This is designed for use with first strikes. So if you shoot first strikes and you like scopes, you should pay attention. What's so cool about this thing? It is between 1 to 6 times magnification, so you can adjust the magnification, which is neat. It is illuminated with either red or green, so you can basically change the level of illumination on the actual reticles, and that's neat. So in low light, whatever, it should work just fine. And it is, like I said, completely calibrated for first strikes, and it's also calibrated to either 280 feet per second or 300 feet per second, and it's been calibrated for use with what's called an optimizer speed dial. And if you don't know what that is essentially an adjustable riser for crossbows. And because crossbows have like a pretty pronounced trajectory, they also work really well for paintball. So this thing has been designed to be used with one of those if you want to use one. So that's pretty neat. Now, the way that they make this scope that's like fully designed for 280 or 300, use with an adjustable riser or not, is they just pack a ton of information into the reticle itself. So once you actually look in the scope, there's a ton of info. We are gonna get to that. We are gonna explain what all that means. But one of the other really nice features I wanted to tell you about before we get into that is the eye relief itself when you actually look into this scope. Most scopes, you have to get pretty close to the actual housing in order to actually see through it. So if you're wearing a mask, that can be an issue. Essentially, you could just not be able to get close enough to get a clear view. The eye relief on this thing is like 4 inches. So even with a mask on, pretty much any mask on, you're gonna be able to get behind it nice and comfortably. You're gonna have a nice clear view. It actually is really nice to use with a mask on. As for the reticle itself, we've actually got a bit of a demonstration for you so we can explain it more, because as you will see, there's a lot going on in there. So at first glance, there's a lot of information going on in this scope, but all of it is pretty relevant information. On the top, what you have is essentially a legend. So on the left side, you see 280 FPS. On the right side, you've got 300 FPS. What that means is that all of the numbers along the left side of the scope are corresponding to if you're cronied to 280. All of the numbers on the right side of the scope are corresponding to if you're cronied to 300. So underneath that, what you have is a little triangle symbol, and then a slash, and then a 0, and it's on both sides. Now what this corresponds to is whether or not you're using the optimizer speed dial. So the outermost numbers, the ones on the far left and far right side of the scope, those are the ranges that correspond to if you are using the optimizer speed dial. Whereas the innermost numbers, the ones that are directly to the left and right of the circles themselves, those are the ranges that correspond to if you're not using the optimizer speed dial. So essentially, all of the ranges are all already in the scope, whether or not you're cronied to 280 or 300, and whether or not you're using the optimizer speed dial or not. They've essentially all got the ranges listed. Now the circles themselves, those actually correspond to the relative size of your target's head at that distance. So it's a teensy bit complicated, but essentially most of these distances have 2 circles listed. The top one is going to correspond to 280 FPS. The bottom one is going to correspond to 300 FPS. So essentially, if you're cronied to 300, you're going to be using the bottom circles and trying to line up those circles with the size of your target's head. Once the head basically fills the circle, it's not too big or too small, essentially you're 0 to the right range, and if you take the shot, it should go right where that circle indicates. So in this demonstration, we've got the marker cronied to 280 FPS, so we're using the numbers on the left side. We've got our topmost circle matched up with the helmet. It looks like it's a good fit, but we're gonna see how the circle underneath that works, and we're gonna take a shot at it. As you can see, we shot too high. The mask is a little bit bigger than the circle, so we're not quite zeroed in yet. If we go back to the top circle, looks like a good match. Now we're gonna take a shot at that. Just to make sure it's not a fluke, we're gonna take another one. Now, of course, if the mask were further away, then we're gonna wanna match it up with a circle that's lower down in order to make the shot go further. So as you can see, A lot of information going on inside that scope, but the idea is once you've got it zeroed, once you've got it calibrated, then it's kind of a set it and forget it deal. You essentially, once you've got it all zeroed in, it's always going to be essentially giving you the information that you need. So even if you play most of the time at 280, which I'm sure most people do, maybe you get an opportunity to turn it up to 300, you don't have to re-zero the scope. The scope is still zeroed and it's gonna give you all that information you need to use, which is great. Also, let's say most of the time you don't use one of those speed dial optimizers and then suddenly you decide, I do wanna use one of those. Again, the scope does not have to be re-zeroed. You throw that on there and it's gonna tell you exactly what you need to know. So lots of information, lots of cool features. I don't wanna forget, but it also comes with one of these little things. Now this, if you've never seen one of those, is, I think they're usually called a kill flash. It's essentially just a little honeycomb structure thing that you're gonna screw onto the front of the scope, and that's gonna kill any kind of scope glint or reflection. So if you're playing in the bright sun or something like that, you put that on there and then no one's gonna see, your shiny scope glinting at them. So no one's gonna know that you're about to shoot at them. So that's really, really neat. But yeah, really, really cool product. Very, very if you're into sniping first strikes, you should definitely take a look at these because they're super neat. I had a lot of fun messing around with this. But what do you guys think? Who out there uses one of these and what do you got to say about it? We'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you can like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and of course, as always, thank you for watching.